Jia-eun walked quickly through the long, curved hallway of the Galactic Academy. The transparent walls showed the dying star outside, its red glow lighting up the space around them. She kept her head down as she passed groups of alien students who turned to stare at her. "Human," one of them whispered, the word sounding like an insult. Jia-eun gripped her data pad tighter, but did not look up. After 3 months at the academy, she was used to this. Humans were rare here. Most species thought humans were too simple, too weak, and too new to space travel to belong at the best school in the galaxy. The hallway opened into the main study hall. Hundreds of students from 50 different species sat at floating desks or stood in groups talking. Some had scales, others had extra limbs or eyes. Some breathed different air through special masks. Jia-eun found an empty desk in the corner and sat down. She was small for a human, with short black hair and dark eyes. Nothing special. Nothing that showed she might be different or important. "Look who it is. The monkey girl is studying again." Jia-eun didn't need to look up to know who was speaking. Taeho stood over her desk with 2 of his friends. He was celestial, one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. His skin had a slight blue glow, and his eyes were completely white with no pupils. Celestials thought they were better than everyone else, especially humans. "I'm busy, Taeho," she said quietly. "Too busy for your betters?" he asked. He picked up her data pad and looked at it. "Advanced spatial physics. This is far too complex for a human brain. You shouldn't waste your time." Jia-eun's hands tightened into fists under the desk. She counted to 5 in her head, then 10. Something inside her wanted to stand up and fight. But that wasn't who she was anymore. She was just a student now. "Please give it back," she said. Taeho laughed. "Your species only left your little planet a century ago. Mine was building stars when your ancestors were still living in caves." He dropped the data pad on her desk. "You don't belong here, human." As he walked away, Jia-eun felt a small pain behind her eyes. This happened sometimes when she got angry or scared, like there was something trying to break through in her mind. "Don't let him bother you." A green-skinned girl with leaf-like hair sat down beside Jia-eun. This was Sujai, a plant-based life form from a forest world. She was one of the few students who was nice to Jia-eun. "I don't," Jia-eun lied. "He treats everyone like that," Suji said, "but humans especially." "Why does he hate humans so much?" Jia-eun asked. Sujai lowered her voice. "His family lost power when the Dominion fell. Many Celestials did. Some blame humans for it." The Dominion. The word made Jia-eun's head hurt more. The sovereign Dominion had ruled much of the galaxy with fear for centuries, until 5 years ago when it suddenly collapsed. Now the galaxy was free, and the Academy had been built as a place where all species could learn together in peace. Humans had nothing to do with that, Jia-eun said. But even as she spoke, an image flashed in her mind. A large room with star maps on the walls, people in uniform bowing to her as she entered. "Are you okay?" Suji asked. "You look pale." Jia-eun shook her head to clear it. "I'm fine. Just tired." An announcement echoed through the hall. "All students report to tactical studies in 5 minutes." As Jia-eun gathered her things, she caught Taeho watching her from across the room. His white eyes narrowed with dislike. If only he knew who she really was. But even Jia-eun herself wasn't sure about that anymore. The memories were there, just beyond reach, like a dream she couldn't quite remember upon waking. "Coming?" Suji asked. Jia-eun nodded and followed her friend, just another ordinary student heading to class. The Tactical Studies classroom was a large room with a round table in the center. Above the table, holograms showed stars, planets, and ships. Professor Daejung, an old celestial with kind eyes unlike Taeho's, stood waiting for the students. "Today, we will test your ability to think quickly," he said. "I will show you a battle situation. You must decide what to do." Jia Yun sat between Suji and a tall four-armed student named Jaiho. Taho sat across from her, still watching her with those cold white eyes. The hologram changed to show a small fleet of ships surrounded by a much larger enemy force. "You are the commander of these ships," Professor Daejung said. "The enemy has cut off your escape. What do you do?" Students began to call out answers. "Fight through the weakest point. Call for help. Use the planet's gravity to increase speed." Jia Yun stayed silent, but inside her head, something was happening. The pain was back, stronger now. The room seemed to fade away, replaced by another room, another time. She stood before a large window showing the blackness of space. Officers in dark uniforms waited for her order. The enemy thought they had won. They didn't know what she had planned. Jia Yun, do you have an answer? Professor Daejung was looking at her. Jia Yun blinked. The memory faded. Everyone was staring at her. She started. Then, without thinking, she pointed to a spot in the hologram. "Send 2 ships here as a distraction. Then take the rest and fly directly into the star." The room went silent. Taho laughed. "Suicide is your answer. Typical human thinking." But Professor Daejung looked interested. "Go on." Words came to Jia Yun without her knowing where they came from. "The star is putting out solar flares on this side. If the ships go in at this angle and use their shields together, they can ride the plasma wave out the other side. The enemy ships are too big to follow. They would burn up." The professor stared at her, then touched some buttons. The hologram showed exactly what Jia Yun had described. The small ships rode the solar flare to safety while the enemy was left behind. "This is correct," Professor Daejung said slowly. "But this is a very advanced tactic. How did you know this?" Jia Yun felt cold. How did she know? I must have read it somewhere." "That's the Harbinger maneuver," someone said. "From the Battle of Procyon." "Impossible," Taho said. "No human could understand that strategy, let alone a student. She must have cheated." After class, Jia Yun hurried back to her room. Her head was pounding now. She shared the small space with Jia Yun, a quiet human girl who spent most of her time in the medical labs. Jia Yun was watching the news on the wall screen. A reporter was talking about attacks on the outer systems. "Dominion loyalists are becoming active again," the reporter said. 5 years after the fall, these groups still believe the Dominion will return to power. The screen showed the Dominion symbol, a black circle with 3 red lines. Jia Yun stared at it, and suddenly fell to her knees as pain shot through her head. She was walking down a long hallway. People in uniforms stepped aside, bowing their heads. On her chest was that same symbol. She entered a room where generals waited around a table. "The Harbinger has arrived," someone announced. "All rise for the Supreme Strategist." Jia Yun, are you okay? Jia Yun was kneeling beside her, looking worried. Jia Yun's vision cleared. She was back in her room, on the floor. "I'm fine. Just tired from class." "You don't look fine. You're shaking." Jia Yun got to her feet. "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. The memories were getting stronger. Fragments of a life she once lived were pushing through whatever wall had been built in her mind. That night, Jia Yun dreamed of stars exploding and fleets of ships following her commands. She dreamed of standing before crowds of aliens who feared her. And in the dream, she wasn't afraid or small. She was powerful. She was the Harbinger. Over the next few weeks, the academy changed. There were more guards in the hallways, security scans at every door. The news talked about more attacks by old Dominion forces. Everyone was on edge. In the dining hall, students no longer mixed with other species. Each group sat with their own kind. The peace that the academy stood for seemed to be breaking. Jia Yun sat alone, as usual. There were only 5 humans at the academy, and the others had started avoiding her after the incident in tactical studies class. Even Sujei seemed nervous around her now. Still trying to pretend you belong here, human. Taho stood by her table, surrounded by his friends. Since the class, his dislike for her had grown stronger. Now there was something else in his voice. Fear, maybe. The academy is for everyone. Taiho, Jia Yun said, keeping her voice steady. Not anymore, he said. The galaxy is remembering how things should be. Species should stay with their own kind. He looked at her with those cold white eyes. Especially humans. Your kind caused all this trouble. What are you talking about? Jia Yun asked. Everyone knows humans helped bring down the Dominion. Before that, there was order. Now look. He waved around the room, where groups of aliens sat apart, watching each other with distrust. Jia Yun started to feel angry. The Dominion was evil. They enslaved whole worlds. They brought peace and order to primitive species who needed guidance. Taho shot back. Like yours. Across the hall, Jia Yun saw a small mouse-like student named Zhu Rei being pushed by two larger students. They were taking her food and laughing. Zhu Rei was from a planet that had suffered badly under Dominion rule. Without thinking, Jia Yun stood up. Excuse me, she said, walking past Taho. Don't turn your back on me, human, he said, grabbing her arm. What happened next was so fast that later, Jia Yun could barely remember it. Her body moved on its own. She twisted Taho's arm behind his back and pushed him face down onto the table in one smooth motion. It was like someone else was controlling her body. The dining hall went silent. Everyone stared. Taho's friends stepped back, shocked. Even Taho looked more surprised than angry. Jia Yun let go immediately, shocked at herself. I'm sorry, she said. I don't know why I did that. But she did know. It was muscle memory from her past life. From years of combat training. Jia Yun hurried across the hall to Zhu Rei, helping the small alien gather her things. The bullies backed away when Jia Yun looked at them. Thank you, Zhu Rei said in a tiny voice. No one ever stands up to them. Jia Yun nodded and quickly left the dining hall. She could feel everyone watching her, especially Taho, whose white eyes now held a look of hate. In her room that night, Jia Yun was waiting for her. Everyone's talking about what you did to Taho, she said. I didn't mean to, Jia Yun said. It just happened. Jia Yun looked at her strangely. That move you used. It's a military takedown. Where did you learn that? Before Jia Yun could answer, an alarm sounded throughout the academy. Red lights flashed in the hallway. All students returned to quarters immediately, the voice said over the speakers. This is not a drill. Security threat level has been raised to maximum. Jia Yun turned on the news. The reporter looked scared. We have confirmed reports that Dominion loyalist forces have taken control of 3 outer system planets, she said. The Galactic Council has called an emergency meeting. The screen showed warships gathering, old Dominion ships, but with new weapons. Sources say the loyalists are being led by a new commander, that they are searching for someone called the Betrayer, believed to be a former Dominion leader who helped bring about its fall. Jia Yun sat on her bed, her hands shaking. The Betrayer, that was what they had called her after she turned against them, after she used her knowledge to help the resistance. Are you okay? Jia Yun asked, watching her closely. You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, Jia Yun lied. But the wall in her mind was cracking more every day, and she knew that her past was coming back to find her. 3 days after the alarm, the academy was still on high alert. Classes continued, but with more guards present. Students were not allowed to leave the station. Everyone was scared. Jia Yun sat in the main hall with hundreds of other students. Today, a special guest was coming to speak. The screen showed a large military ship docking with the academy. We welcome Admiral Hyun Ki of the Galactic Defense Force, the academy director announced. A tall, older human man walked onto the stage. He wore a uniform with many medals. His hair was gray, and his face was serious. Several alien officers followed him. "The situation is under control," Admiral Hyun-ki said. "The Loyalist forces have been pushed back. Your safety is our top priority." As he spoke about unity and peace, Ja-yeon felt strange. She knew this man, not from the news, but from somewhere else. From before. After the speech, students lined up to leave. As Ja-yeon passed near the stage, Admiral Hyun-ki turned and saw her. He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes widening. Then he did something that shocked everyone nearby. He gave her a small bow, the kind given to someone of high rank. "It is an honor," he said quietly. Ja-yeon froze. She didn't know what to say. Behind her, she could feel Tai-ho watching. "I think you have mistaken me for someone else, Admiral," she managed to say. The Admiral seemed to understand his mistake. "Of course. My apologies, young student." Ja-yeon hurried away, her heart pounding. She could hear Tai-ho and his friends whispering behind her. That night, as Ja-yeon was studying in the library, a message appeared on her data pad. "Meet me in Observation Deck 7. Come alone. HK." She shouldn't go. It could be a trap. But something told her to trust this man. She waited until most students had gone to their rooms, then made her way to the observation deck. The deck was empty except for Admiral Hyun-ki, who stood looking out at the stars. "I apologize for my mistake earlier," he said without turning around. "I should have been more careful." "Who do you think I am?" Ja-yeon asked. Now he turned to face her. "I know exactly who you are. The question is, do you remember who you are?" Harbinger. The name hit Ja-yeon like a physical blow. Images flooded her mind. War rooms, battle plans, secret meetings. "I don't. I can't," she stammered. "The memory block is still working then," the Admiral said. "Good. It was meant to protect you. And us." "What are you talking about?" Ja-yeon asked, though part of her already knew. 5 years ago, you were the highest-ranking human in the Dominion forces, a tactical genius they call the Harbinger. But you were also our best agent inside the Dominion. Ja-yeon leaned against the wall for support. "I was a spy. More than that. You rose through their ranks, gained their trust, learned all their secrets. Then you helped us bring them down from the inside. You gave us the plans, the codes, the weakness points. Without you, the Dominion would still rule half the galaxy. Why do I remember? After it was over, you asked us to take your memories away. The guilt was too much. Necessary as it was, your actions led to many deaths. You wanted a normal life." He looked sad. "We created a new identity for you. Sent you here to start fresh. But now they're looking for me," Ja-yeon said. "The Loyalists. They're calling me the betrayer." Admiral Hyun-ki nodded. "They've discovered you're alive. We thought you were safe here, but I was wrong. They found you, and now they're coming. Coming here, to the academy." Ja-yeon felt cold with fear. "All these students will be in danger because of me. We're increasing security, but you need to be prepared." He handed her a small device. "This will unlock your quarters if you need to leave quickly. I have a ship standing by." "I should go now before anyone gets hurt," Ja-yeon said. "It's too late. If you run, they'll just follow and might hurt more people trying to get to you." The Admiral put a hand on her shoulder. "The memories will continue to return. Don't fight them. You might need what you once knew." As Ja-yeon walked back to her room, she didn't notice Tai-ho hiding in the shadows, watching her. He had followed her and heard everything. And now he knew exactly who she really was. Tai-ho could not sleep that night. The human girl he had mocked for months was the Harbinger, the most feared military mind in recent history, the one who had brought down the Dominion and changed the galaxy forever. He needed proof, something more than a conversation he had overheard. The next morning, while other students went to breakfast, Tai-ho went to the Academy archives. The archives were deep in the station, away from the windows. Rows of data terminals filled the room, each with access to the history of the galaxy. Most information about the Dominion's fall was classified. But Tai-ho's family had once been important. He still had codes that might work. He entered his father's old clearance code and held his breath. The screen flashed green. Access granted. Tai-ho quickly searched for Harbinger and Dominion Fall. Files appeared on the screen, most of them still locked. But one was open, a report about the final battle. The Dominion fleet was led into a trap, the report said. The resistance forces knew their plans because of intelligence provided by an agent known as the Harbinger. This agent had risen to become the Dominion's supreme strategist, with access to all military plans. There was a picture, but it was blurry and dark. Tai-ho could just make out a human in a Dominion uniform. The face was hard to see, but the height and build matched Jia-yun. Another file showed a list of battles where the Harbinger had commanded Dominion forces. One was the Battle of Proshin, the same battle from their class exercise. "It is her," Tai-ho whispered. But instead of feeling angry, he felt confused. If Jia-yun was really the Harbinger, why was she pretending to be a simple student? Why was she letting people like him treat her badly? The Harbinger he had heard about was powerful and feared, not quiet and shy like Jia-yun. As Tai-ho left the archives, he saw Jia-yun walking alone in the hallway. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. Not like someone who had once commanded fleets and changed the course of history. He followed her, staying far enough behind that she wouldn't notice. She went to the simulator room, a place where students could practice flying ships in virtual space. It was empty this early. Jia-yun sat at the controls and started a program. On the screen, a battle appeared. Ships moving in complex patterns. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, directing the ships with incredible skill. It wasn't like watching a student practice. It was like watching a master at work. Tai-ho watched from the doorway, amazed. This was not the Jia-yun he knew. This was someone else, someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Suddenly, Jia-yun stopped. She put her hands to her head as if in pain. Then she started to speak, but not in her normal voice. This voice was commanding, strong. "Move the Third Fleet to Sector 7, she said to the empty room. "Prepare to engage when the enemy crosses the line. No mercy." Then she seemed to wake up, looking around in confusion. She saw Tai-ho in the doorway and froze. "How long have you been there?" she asked, her voice back to normal. "Long enough," Tai-ho said. "I know who you are." Jia-yun stood up slowly. "I don't know what you're talking about. I was there last night. I heard everything the Admiral told you." Tai-ho stepped into the room. "You're the Harbinger. You brought down the Dominion." Jia-yun didn't deny it this time. "And now you'll tell everyone." "I should. My family lost everything when the Dominion fell." Tai-ho's voice was bitter. "My father was executed. My mother took her own life. All because of what you did." Jia-yun's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. The Dominion hurt so many people. I had to stop them. But I never wanted anyone to suffer." Before Tai-ho could answer, alarms began to sound throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the hallway. A voice came over the speakers. "All students to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill. The station is under attack." Chaos filled the hallways as students ran toward the shelters. Through the windows, Jia-yun and Tai-ho could see ships approaching the station. Old Dominion warships with new weapons. "They're here for me," Jia-yun said. Her voice was different now. Stronger, more certain. A loud explosion shook the station. The lights flickered. "That was the main hangar," Jia-yun said, as if she could tell just from the sound and feel of the blast. "They're inside already." Another explosion, closer this time. Students screamed and pushed harder to get to the shelters. "We need to go," Tahoe said. But Jia Yun was looking at her datapad. "A message from Admiral Hyun-ki. They're targeting your residential section. Get out now." "The dormitories," Jia Yun said. "They're going there first. Ji Young and the others are in danger." Without waiting for Tahoe, she started running against the crowd, heading toward the dormitories. After a moment's hesitation, Tahoe followed her. The hallway to the dorms was empty. Everyone had already evacuated. But as they turned the corner, they saw 5 armed soldiers in black uniforms. Old Dominion Special Forces. They were checking room numbers. "They're looking for my room," Jia Yun whispered. She pulled Tahoe into a side passage. "What do we do?" Tahoe asked. For the first time, he was looking at her not with contempt but with hope that she had a plan. Jia Yun closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were clear and focused. "The ventilation system," she said, pointing to a panel in the wall. "We can use it to get ahead of them and warn anyone still in the dorms." They removed the panel and crawled into the narrow tunnel. Jia Yun moved with confidence, turning at exactly the right places, as if she had memorized the station's layout. "How do you know where to go?" Tahoe asked as they crawled. "I studied the station plans when I arrived," Jia Yun said. "Old habits." They emerged near the main dormitory area. Most rooms were empty, but they heard voices from one. Jia Young and 2 other human students were still gathering their things. "We have to leave now," Jia Yun said, bursting in. "Dominion forces are coming this way." "What? How do you know?" Jia Young asked. Before Jia Yun could answer, footsteps sounded in the hallway. The soldiers were approaching. "Hide," Jia Yun ordered. She pushed the others into the bathroom and closed the door, but remained in the main room herself. "What are you doing?" Tahoe whispered from the bathroom. "Saving you," Jia Yun said. The door burst open. The 5 soldiers entered, weapons ready. Their leader, a tall alien with gray skin, looked at Jia Yun. "Subject identified," he said into his communicator. "We have found the betrayer." Jia Yun stood straight, no longer the shy student but someone used to command. "Commander Yun Seo," she said, recognizing the leader. "You were never very good at surprise attacks." The commander looked shocked that she knew his name. "How dare you speak to me, traitor? You destroyed everything." "The Dominion destroyed itself," Jia Yun said. "I just helped it along." "You will come with us. The new sovereign wants to execute you personally." "New sovereign?" Jia Yun asked. "Who's trying to wear that title now?" From the bathroom, Tahoe and the others watched through a crack in the door. They couldn't believe this was the same Jia Yun they knew. "Enough talk," Commander Yun Seo said. "Take her." 2 soldiers moved forward. What happened next was so fast it was hard to follow. Jia Yun moved with incredible speed. She disarmed the first soldier and used his weapon to stun the second. Then she rolled across the floor as the others fired, coming up with both weapons now. In seconds, 4 of the 5 soldiers were down. Only Commander Yun Seo remained, his weapon pointed at her head. "The Harbinger lives, it seems," he said. "And the betrayer remembers," Jia Yun replied, her own weapon steady in her hands. More explosions sounded throughout the station. The battle for the academy had only just begun. Jia Yun and Commander Yun Seo faced each other, weapons pointed. Neither moved. "You can't win this," Jia Yun said. "The academy has defenses. We disabled them before we arrived." The commander replied with a cold smile. "Your old codes still worked." This surprised Jia Yun. Her old command codes should have been deleted years ago. A message came through the commander's communicator. "All teams, we have resistance in the main hall. Reinforcements needed." Commander Yun Seo kept his weapon on Jia Yun, but spoke into his communicator. "Hold position. I have the betrayer." Jia Yun saw her chance. While the commander was distracted, she kicked his weapon away and knocked him unconscious with a quick blow to the head. It's safe now, she called to the others. Ta-ho, Jia-young, and the other students came out of the bathroom, staring at the 5 unconscious soldiers on the floor. How did you do that? Jia-young asked, eyes wide. There's no time to explain, Jia-young said. We need to move. They'll send more when these don't report back. She picked up the commander's communicator and weapon. Then she led the group into the hallway. Where are we going? One of the human students asked. The emergency escape pods, Jia-young said. But we need to avoid the main corridors. They'll have those covered. As they moved through back passages, more explosions shook the station. The lights kept going out, then coming back on as emergency power kicked in. You know who she is, don't you? Jia-young whispered to Tai-ho as they followed Jia-young. Tai-ho nodded. She's the Harbinger. Jia-young gasped. Everyone in the galaxy had heard that name. They reached a maintenance tunnel that would take them to the escape pod bay. But as they started to climb in, Jia-young stopped. Wait, she said. I hear something. From inside the tunnel came the sound of boots on metal. More soldiers were coming from the other direction. We're trapped, Jia-young said, panic in her voice. Jia-young looked around quickly, her mind working fast. This way, she said, leading them down another hallway. They entered an old classroom. Jia-young locked the door behind them. What now? Ta-ho asked. There's no other exit. Yes, there is, Jia-young said. She moved to a wall panel and entered a code. A hidden door opened, revealing a narrow passage. Emergency exit. Every room has one. How do you know all this? Jia-young asked. Ta-ho looked at Jia-young. Tell them, he said. They deserve to know who they're following. Jia-young sighed. We need to keep moving. I'll explain as we go. As they crawled through the narrow passage, Jia-young spoke softly. 5 years ago, I wasn't a student. I was the supreme strategist of the Dominion forces. They called me the Harbinger. The other students gasped. But I was also working for the Resistance. Jia-young continued. I was placed inside the Dominion when I was very young. I worked my way up, earned their trust, and learned all their secrets. You were a spy? Jia-young asked. Yes. When the time was right, I helped bring down the Dominion from within. I gave the Resistance the plans, the codes, the weak points. I helped end the Dominion's rule over half the galaxy. Why don't you remember all this? One student asked. In class, you seemed normal. After it was over, I asked to have my memories blocked. Jia-young said. The guilt was too much. I had helped win freedom for billions, but my actions also led to many deaths. I wanted to forget, to be normal. So you came here, pretending to be a student, Ta-ho said. There was no anger in his voice now, just understanding. Yes, but now they've found me, and they want revenge. They reached the end of the passage. Jia-young opened another panel, and they found themselves in a small control room. This is an auxiliary bridge, Jia-young explained. We can see what's happening in the rest of the station from here. The screen showed fights breaking out in several areas. Academy security forces were battling the Dominion soldiers, but they were outnumbered. They're taking control of the main systems, Jia-young said, looking at the data. They'll have the whole station soon. What do we do? Ta-ho asked. For the first time, he was looking to her for leadership. We fight back, Jia-young said. And I think I know how. Jia-young's fingers moved quickly over the control panels. The auxiliary bridge had access to many of the station's systems. What's your plan? Ta-ho asked, standing beside her. The Dominion forces are using my old command codes, Jia-young said. That means they think like I used to think. I know what they'll do next. On the screens, they could see Admiral Hyun-ki and his officers fighting in the main hall. They were outnumbered, but holding their position. First, we need to contact the Admiral, Jia-young said. She opened a secure channel. "Admiral, this is Jia Yun. I'm in auxiliary control with 4 students." "Jia Yun." Thank goodness. The Admiral's voice came through. "The situation is bad. They've taken the main hangar and the central computer. We can't hold out much longer." "I have a plan," Jia Yun said, "but I need your help. Can you get to the escape pod bay?" "Yes, but what good will that do? We can't abandon the station." "Trust me," Jia Yun said. "Get everyone you can to the escape pods, but don't launch them." After ending the transmission, Jia Yun turned to the others. "Now for the hard part. We need to get to the main reactor control." "The reactor?" Jia Yun looked worried. "What are you going to do?" "Create a distraction," Jia Yun said. "Not destroy the station." They left the auxiliary bridge and moved carefully through maintenance tunnels toward the reactor section. Twice they had to hide from Dominion patrols. Jia Yun seemed to know exactly when to stop and when to move. "How many troops do they have?" Tahoe asked. "From what I've seen, about 100, Jia Yun said. "A small force, but enough to take a school." They reached the reactor control room. To their relief, it was empty. "They don't think anyone would come here," Jia Yun explained. "It's too dangerous." She sat at the main console and began entering commands. The huge reactor core glowed blue behind thick glass walls. "What are you doing?" Jia Yun asked, watching the screens. "I'm creating a controlled power surge," Jia Yun explained. "It will look like the reactor is going to explode. The Dominion forces will think they have minutes to evacuate. But it won't actually explode," one of the students asked nervously. "No, but they don't know that." Jia Yun smiled a little. "It's a trick I used once before, in the Battle of Proshin." As she worked, Tahoe watched her. This was not the quiet human girl he had bullied. This was a brilliant commander, calm under pressure, always thinking several steps ahead. "Why did you let me treat you so badly?" he asked suddenly. "All those months. You could have stopped me at any time." Jia Yun paused her work and looked at him. "I was trying to be normal, to forget who I was. And maybe I felt I deserved it, after everything I did." Before Tahoe could answer, Jia Yun turned back to the console. "It's ready." She pressed the final button. Alarms began to sound throughout the station. The reactor's lights flashed red. A computerized voice announced, "Warning, reactor overload in 10 minutes. All personnel evacuate immediately." "Now we wait," Jia Yun said. On the security screens, they watched as panic spread among the Dominion forces. Soldiers began running toward their ships. "It's working," Jia Yun said. "Admiral Hyunkil, are you in position?" Jia Yun asked over the communicator. "Yes. We have about 50 students and staff in the escape pod bay. The Dominion forces are retreating to their ships." "Good. When I give the signal, launch a single pod. They'll think we're on it." As the countdown continued, they watched the Dominion ships prepare to leave. Commander Yunseo, now conscious again, was visible on one screen, ordering his troops to fall back. 3 minutes to reactor overload, the computer announced. "Now, Admiral," Jia Yun said. On the screen, they saw a single escape pod launch from the station. Just as Jia Yun predicted, the Dominion ships immediately started firing at it. "Their attention is divided," Jia Yun said. "Time for the real plan." 2 minutes to reactor overload, the computer voice announced. "Time for Phase 2, Jia Yun said. Her fingers flew over the controls. "While they're focused on the escape pod, I'm accessing their ships through their command channels." "You can do that?" Jia Yun asked in amazement. "They're using my old codes, remember?" Jia Yun smiled. "So I can use them too." On the screen, they watched as the Dominion ships suddenly lost power. Their weapons stopped firing. Their engines died. "What did you do?" Tahoe asked. "I sent a shutdown command to their main systems. Jia Yun explained. A backdoor I created years ago. They never found it. 1 minute to reactor overload, the computer continued. And now to end the fake countdown. Jia Yun entered another series of commands. The red lights stopped flashing. The alarms went silent. Reactor stabilizing. Emergency cancelled, the computer announced. Jia Yun opened the station-wide communication channel. This is Jia Yun Kim, formerly known as the Harbinger. To all Dominion forces, your ships are disabled. The reactor was never in danger. You have been defeated. She switched to a private channel. Admiral, their ships are disabled. You can move in now. Well done, the Admiral replied. Defense forces are on their way to take control of the enemy vessels. Within minutes, Academy security and the Admiral's forces had surrounded the powerless Dominion ships. The soldiers inside had no choice but to surrender. You did it, Jia Yun said, hugging Jia Yun. You saved everyone. We all did it, Jia Yun said, looking at her friends. As they made their way back to the main hall, they saw the damage from the battle. Parts of the beautiful academy were broken, but it could be fixed, and no one had died. In the main hall, they found Admiral Hyun-ki directing the capture of the last Dominion soldiers. When he saw Jia Yun, he smiled and bowed. The Harbinger returns, he said. Students and staff gathered around, staring at Jia Yun with new eyes. The quiet human girl they had known was gone. In her place stood someone confident and strong. Commander Yun Seo was brought in with his hands bound. He glared at Jia Yun. This isn't over. There will be others. And we'll be ready, Jia Yun said calmly. Later, as medical teams treated the injured and repair crews began their work, Jia Yun stood by the big windows, looking out at the stars. Taeho found her there. I was wrong about you, he said. About humans. Jia Yun turned to him. You were wrong about many things. I know. Taeho looked ashamed. My family served the Dominion. I was raised to believe in their power, their right to rule. When they fell, I blamed humans because it was easier than seeing the truth. And what is the truth? Jia Yun asked. That the Dominion was wrong, that no species has the right to rule others. He paused. I'm sorry for how I treated you. Jia Yun nodded. Apology accepted. The next day, the Academy held a special gathering. The director stood before all the students and staff. Yesterday, we were attacked. But thanks to the courage of many, especially one among us, we survived. He gestured to Jia Yun. Would you join me, please? Jia Yun walked to the front of the hall. Whispers followed her. Everyone now knew who she really was. Jia Yun Kim came to us as a student, the director said. Now we know she was once the Harbinger, the legendary strategist who helped free the galaxy from the Dominion's rule. Some of you may fear her for this, some may admire her, but I ask you to see her for who she is now, a brave young woman who risked everything to save us all. The hall was silent for a moment. Then someone began to clap. It was Taeho. One by one, others joined in until the whole room filled with applause. Jia Yun looked out at the faces. Humans, celestials, and dozens of other species, all together. This was why she had fought. This was worth everything. I came here to forget my past, she said when the applause died down. But now I see that I can't. And shouldn't. My experiences, good and bad, made me who I am, just like all of yours do. As she finished speaking, Jia Yun saw Sujay smiling at her. Jia Yun gave her a thumbs up, and Taeho nodded with respect. The girl who had been treated with contempt was now seen for who she truly was, and the Academy, like the galaxy itself, would never be the same.